Back to an instant reaction edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie Schneiderite. We have a ton of coaching news for the Rutgers football staff. We have two new defensive line coaches, and we have a new coach who's going to be coaching linebackers, who's been here already. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the first of the two new defensive line coaches, Colin Ferrell. I don't know how it's pronounced specifically. It's not the Irish actor. It is the assistant head coach and former defensive line coach of Kent State. He's a New Jersey guy who Richie talked about yesterday on the pod, so you kind of spoke it into existence. Tell us all about this guy and what Rutgers is getting in Colin Ferrell.
Yeah, so New Jersey native, South Jersey guy. Oh, South, I guess, ish. Hamilton, so that's South, right? Yeah, I'm trying to think. I get my geography all mixed up. But yeah, South Jersey guy, Steinert High School native, Steinert High School Hall of Famer. Went out to Kent State for college and played 4 years there and got a shot in the NFL with the Colts for a couple years. After that, he went to the Hun School for a few years and was an assistant coach there. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who the Hun School is. If you don't, it's one of the biggest fertile recruiting grounds in the state of New Jersey. Most notably, I guess, for Rutgers fans, Jacob Allen, Logan Blake, most recently, are both from the Hun School. But yeah, after that, he went right into the college ranks, and he's moved up ever since at Kent State. So he started out as a GA in 2015 and was a GA for 2 years and then ended up just getting promoted to full. I'm sorry, he was a GA in 2015, got promoted to full-time assistant in 2016, and just kind of kept moving up the ranks. He got moved around a bit because they shifted to a 3-4. So when you look at his previous coaching experience, he was an outside linebackers coach for a year when they switched with a new DC, only to go back to DLine coach the following year. This past season, he was also promoted to assistant head coach / assistant head coach / defensive line coach. Usually that doesn't mean much, maybe a few more responsibilities, if that. But most of the time, that's just to kind of give him a paid bump, give him a new title, and keep other schools away from him, which it seems like they did last offseason. But this offseason, they weren't able to do that, and he's at Rutgers now, and I think they got a damn good recruiter. This guy, I've known him for a while, actually, because the Kent State always comes to the Rutgers camps every summer. They're one of the few or I shouldn't say few. There's like 30, 40 colleges that show up, but yeah, they come to Rutgers camp every summer, and he's always connecting with recruits. You always hear recruits talking about him. Two guys specifically that we've talked about recently, Murad Watson, who was a Rutgers offeree recently, was committed to Kent State before he flipped to Syracuse and almost flipped to Rutgers at one point too. And then I can't remember the other kid's name. Farrell Nagano, the Canadian defensive lineman that they just flipped, also from Kent State. So it goes to show you he has a pretty good eye for talent. If Power 5s are flipping him late, there's not much he could do when you're at a G5 level school like that against a Power 5 level school or Power 4 level school. But no, he's got a great eye for talent, and he's developed quite a few notable players. Specifically, I think and on top of it all, actually, I didn't even mention this. He survived 2 coaching staffs or 2 head coaches. That's always an interesting thing because that means that you obviously bring something to the table for that new head coach. Because Sean Lewis left for Colorado, they got a new guy, and he stayed on board. And he got promoted.
Actually, 3. He was there under Paul Haynes as well. So this is his 3rd head coach at Kent State.
Goes to show you that he is pretty good at his job. 30 under 30 guy or 35 under 35, whatever the hell those lists are. I think they just kind of extend it 5 years. They might as well do 40 under 40 at this point. But one of the top recruiters in the MAC, great talent developer. I think this is a phenomenal get. Now, that being said, it sounds like he's only going to be coaching a specific unit along that defensive line.
So edge rushers, defensive tackles, which one is he going to be coaching?
He's going to be coaching the interior, it sounds like. So something to keep an eye on.
Interesting. A tasty little nugget there. So Kent State had one of the top group of 5 interior defensive tackles in football this past year, in CJ West. PFF had him ranked as their 13th overall interior lineman out of, I think close to 800 qualifiers. He's got 7 sacks in his career. He had his most sacks in 2021 with 5. He had 2 this past year. He's got an 86 or he's an 85.9 grade. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. He's not in the portal, but this is a kid who I think we should be on the lookout for. If he does enter the portal to end up at Rutgers, you'd fill a need. I know we picked up a tackle already, but I really think we could use two. So this is a guy to keep an eye out for. CJ West, defensive tackle. He also went to high school at Nazareth Academy, and if that sounds familiar, that is where Ryan Keeler, the former Rutgers recruit who sadly passed away last year, but he went to high school with Ryan Keeler. So Rutgers probably saw him as a high school recruit as well. Mm-hmm. So even more reason why Rutgers might be in on this kid if he does decide to transfer now that his line coach is no longer there.
I'd assume he's a graduate, so he can probably enter whenever, technically.
Yep. Yeah, so he's this past year was his fourth year in college. Obviously, the COVID year doesn't count, so he has 1 year of eligibility left. So
okay,
keep on the lookout there.
I'm also looking at some of their current commits. There's a 2024 defensive tackle from Plainfield High School. I don't know if they'll show interest in it, but you never know. The connections are there. New Jersey native. They get a lot of guys from Jersey specifically because of Colin Ferrell. They had a running back last year. They had an athlete last year. Just looking through the list. Devin Cargman, the quarterback from Camden a couple years ago. So they do land quite a few Jersey guys. So it's definitely something to keep a close eye on because I'm thinking if I counted correctly, that's 5 or 6 from Jersey over the past 2 recruiting classes. So something to watch.
Yeah, be on the lookout for that because there might be some more movement recruiting-wise with players. Mm-hmm. Another line coach, though, has been hired. So we've talked about the defensive tackle coach. Let's talk about the edge rushers coach. Who's this guy? Where'd he come from? Let's get a little bit of his bio.
All right, I gotta pull it up real quick. I had it all on my phone. Julian Campenni. He is also the assistant head coach at his program. He's also the defensive run coordinator and DLine coach over at Bowling Green. So Rutgers is getting a little bit of Maction flavor this offseason, which I'm all about. I love the Maction. A nice little Thursday night football game between 2 mid schools. Oh, you gotta love it.
Oh yeah.
But he's interesting. So I really I've asked around. No one knows yet. I know it's tough to get an answer sometimes because Greg has been on the road all week recruiting, checking in with coaches, blah blah blah, all the normal typical January stuff. So I can't find a specific connection at the moment to Rutgers or anyone on staff. That being said, this guy's been in the Northeast for a majority of his life. Wyoming area high school in Pennsylvania, alum. UConn, played football at UConn, made the league after that, and then also coached at Boston College. So he's got the whole, basically 4 out of the 5 big schools in the Northeast. He's probably just missing Rutgers and Syracuse. That's really it. He's done an intern at the Bill Walsh Diversity Coaching Fellowship. He was there with the Packers last summer, so he's got a little bit of NFL experience. Another guy who's been on staff at Bowling Green for quite some time. He's been there for 5 years. He's gotten promoted multiple times. He got promoted to D-Run coordinator in 2022, assistant head coach in 2023. So again, those are notable things because that means someone more than likely tried to poach him and wasn't successful. Yeah, he's just I don't really have a whole lot on him, but he does have some interesting background. Bowling Green led the nation with 28 turnovers this past season. They were in a bowl game, so that's always notable.
Another interesting nugget there. So Michigan had 5 turnovers on the entire season in 2023.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right.
4 of those turnovers were against Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a stupid stat that it's going to be one of those things that you hear in that bar trivia. Yeah.
Also, Carl Brooks, he had drafted by the Packers in 2023. He was a first-team All-American according to PFF. I know some of you hate PFF, some of you love it. It's still notable nonetheless. To have a first-team All-American at Bowling Green, he's young too. He's very, very young. I think you told us or told me before the pod he's only 30, I think.
Yeah, he's only 30. Carl Brooks also, as a 6th-round pick, he made a pretty big impact on that Packers defensive line. Yeah. He had 4 sacks as a rookie, which, especially for an interior guy, that's no joke.
For someone that hasn't started either. That's the most impressive part. You're doing this as a rotational player. So,
yep.
Straight up edge rusher, which I shouldn't say edge, but This guy's going to coach the edge rushing unit, defensive ends, whatever you want to call it. Everyone has a different stupid name for it. Some people call it whatever. But yeah, no, this seems like a decent get. I don't really know a whole lot about him, but it's definitely interesting. I'm still trying to figure out what this connection is, because Greg almost always has a connection to his staff. Like, even Mark Orphy really didn't have a connection, but he knew Chase Dodd. Chase Dodd's dad, he coached underneath him, and Chase Dodd's dad talked to Greg, and blah, 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 and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure that's going to trickle out eventually, but it's definitely interesting and something to keep an eye on. I thought this was a decent hire, though.
Yeah, like you were saying, Brooks last year finished as PFF's #1 overall graded edge rusher. He had 69 pressures, nice, for Bowling Green last year. And he had more pressures last year than Will Anderson, who went #3 in the draft. So this guy knows how to coach him up. An interesting quirk as well, both Ferrell and Campenni both had a cup of coffee in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. Ferrell played, which is weird. Yeah, Ferrell played for them in 2008, whereas Campenni played for them in 2015. I don't think either of them made it out of camp, but an interesting little nugget too that both of them did, have a cup of coffee in the NFL. So it always helps to have that in your bag when you're recruiting.
Yeah, I want to say this about the two guys. Number one, like, Bowling Green had a top 25 total defense last year. That's huge. I'm not going to say it's all him, but I'm saying the run game coordinator / defensive line coach obviously played a factor. They also had they made the Quick Lane Bowl. I don't know if they won it. They might have, based on what I'm looking at. But they also had 28 takeaways, which was tied for #1 in the country. They had 1 takeaway in 14 straight games. You mentioned a 4 against Michigan, which is huge in its own right.
Crazy.
That's a national championship, Michigan. Like, if you guys don't remember, that's a huge stat. Like, not even Bama could do that. Not even Washington could do that, or whoever else. So I do think he's more of the. I'm going to go with Camp. I don't know much about his recruiting, but I think Campenni's more of the developmental hire. And don't get me wrong, it's not a knock on Ferrell. Ferrell's a pretty good talent developer too, and has a good eye for talent. But I think, and I might be going out on a ledge a little bit here, but I'm willing to do it. Colin Ferrell is probably going to be one of the better, if not the best, recruiter on this team. I think he's very similar to what you got in Marquise Watson. I think he's a great guy. He knows Jersey more than anyone. He's been through Jersey. If you take away Marquise Watson's SEC experience, which was 2 years at Ole Miss, they have very similar resumes. Except actually Ferrell spent more time at the lower or G5 level, whereas Marquise was at Bryant, so it's a little bit lower level. But I do think both of these are very similar style coaches, very similar style recruiters, and they both have a ton of connections throughout the state. So I really think this guy, Colin Ferrell, is going to be a huge addition for Rutgers in terms of recruiting, and I think people aren't talking about it enough. I know it just happened, obviously, so we'll see what happens. But I know there was some hate when we put him on our hot board, and people were like, "Oh, what are we doing, G5?" Like, no, what are we doing? Like, dude, it's okay to do that. Like, Marquise Watson came from G5. He was great, phenomenal. Demir Shaw.
Well, he came from Ole Miss.
Well, yeah.
So.
Demir Shaw is one of your better recruiters. Where'd he come from? Fucking Fordham? Like,
yeah, yep.
No knock on Fordham, but like,
yep.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to move up eventually. That's just how it works. So. I think he's going to be a great recruiter. I think he's going to be a stud recruiter, and I think we're going to be talking about him for the next year and change.
Yeah, excited by these hires. Both young coaches too. Both of them are in their 30s, so it's always helps to be able to connect with recruits when you're closer in age. Obviously,
yeah. I love seeing Greg being able to adapt too, and just kind of going like, got rid of special teams coordinator. Fuck that, we don't need that. Get off the field.
Yep.
Well, I mean, they have one technically, but he's not an official on the field coach. And then he's like, linebackers, screw it. I need 2 D-line coaches because I need more recruiters. Like, he's willing to adjust.
Yeah, so you mentioned linebackers. We hired 2 full-time defensive line coaches. So what's going to happen with the linebacker coach? That's got to be going to somebody, right?
Yeah. So Joe Harris-Simiak is going to take over that room. It's not a super shock there. The guy has coached every level of the defense. He is the defensive coordinator, so you would hope he knows every level of the defense. But he's going to take over linebackers. He was technically just listed as DC last year, but I've been told that he was the main Nichols coach last season. So obviously they're going to shift the nickels to one of the DB coaches, and he'll shift to full-time linebackers. So if you see a bump in the linebackers, you know why. But I mean, it's the same linebacker core as last year, so it should be relatively similar. But yeah, I mean, nothing crazy. Most DCs have linebacker coaches in their title, or there's an occasional random one that will say D-line coach, but the majority of Power 5 DCs have linebacker coaches in their title, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, when he was at Maine, when he was the defensive coordinator, he was also the linebackers coach before he was elevated to head coach. So this is something he's done before, the double duties. And he was very close with Corey Heatherman, so he knows exactly what he wanted out of his linebackers. And so I think this is a strong shifting of the staff, and I do think we'll see an increased output in defensive line pressures and sacks and tackles for loss with this experienced group, and also double the coaching now.
Yeah, I find it interesting because like those two, Jarrett Kite and Charlie Noonan, they're both great coaches. They're both on the road recruiting. Like I'm intrigued to see how that one's going to work out. Because you still have that one open spot in terms of on the road because Flaherty doesn't really go on the road. Mm-hmm. So you could just rotate Noonan, Flaherty, or not Noonan. Noonan, Valone, and just kind of rotate that last spot. And it's something a little unique, but it's definitely again, this is Greg being open to change, and this is not something that Greg was willing to do in the past. It seems like Greg, I think he'll admit it too. His 1.0 era, he was a little stubborn. Now he's very open to changing stuff and making adjustments.
Yeah, definitely. This has been a collection of staff. The organization of the staff is definitely different than any I can remember at Rutgers. So I'm excited to see how things shake out. Very excited for the season. Excited for these hires. Is there anything, I know we recorded yesterday, is there anything else you wanted to hit on before we head out today?
We did record yesterday. I forgot about that. My brain is mush. No, I think that's really it. We did have we had this news on our boards for at least Campenni for before anyone else. That was cool.
Yeah, you beat up Pete Thamel on this one.
Yeah, that's a nice one. No offense, Pete. He's the Adrian Wojnarowski of college football. Like it's nice when you beat out that guy. But yeah, no. Other than that, like we kind of knew Colin Ferrell. We had him on our board. He was number 1 on our board.
We literally talked about him yesterday.
Yeah,
during our pod.
I'm not crazy.
He was the only coach you mentioned. Yeah.
So if you guys don't believe me, I'd like to think my sources are pretty damn good. No, other than that, I would just say I know because there's going to be a lot of questions about it. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but I would just say keep Marquise Watson in your prayers. He's still on the road to recovery. He still talks to the staff. They still visit him quite a bit, obviously. But yeah, no, I think eventually he's going to get back into coaching. I don't know when or what that timeline looks like, but just keep him in your prayers and hopefully he recovers quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Seems like one of the better guys on the staff. Not that anybody's a bad guy on the staff, but it seemed like the kids really connected with Watson, and it was unfortunate that health issues kept him from coaching this year. Yeah,
great guy.
I did have one thing I wanted to say real quick. Night and Day. If you guys haven't bought any apparel from Night and Day, they're just like the best. They're not even paying us for this. They're not a sponsor. They have this like bomber jacket they just released, which is one of like the cooler Rutgers items I've seen in a while. It's got like the block lettering on the back. They have a deal for it right now, 25% off until Friday, I believe. It's just Night and Day Apparel. Search for them. This is one of the cooler things they've put on their site. And yeah, we also have a discount code, I think, through Rivals, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I think it's just Rutgers Rivals, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to be a double code thing because, like, I know that's already got a code for it. I think you said 25% or something.
Yeah, it's a flash sale. So gotcha. if you have used their site before, you know where to find it. But if you haven't already, I think it's just nightandDayapparel.com. You also could just do a Google search for it. But this is such a cool thing. I felt like I had to talk about it on here.
No, perfectly fine. There's also some Rutgers Rivals gear on there. If you haven't seen, we got a new shirt that just popped up. I'm just saying. I'm gonna flex a little bit here.
Yeah, so Rutgers rivals should get you a 10% discount. Assuming
nice 1869 Natty Champs,
that's sick.
Just threw that bad boy up there. We also got Pound and Nails, Trapezoid of Terror. We Like Pike, my personal favorite, and I gotta brag a little bit about this one. Genius move on my part. The Night Call.
That's great.
That's always cool. But if you just go here, obviously flash sale ends 25% off the jacket. There's all kinds of stuff on here. I do have to shout these guys out because they're the best, and they're New Jersey through and through. They're operating out of Highland Park, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely check them out. They have all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, that's really it.
All right, everybody. Thanks once again for listening. There will be more about this that's posted on the boards, I'm sure. But until next time, this has been another edition of the Night Report Podcast. Signing off.